Hey, this is Jeff, aka Quiet Horn from quiethorn.com. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button down there, get notifications for new videos as I post them. In this video, I'm going to talk about articulating notes without a tongue at all. As trombone players, we are used to having to tongue pretty much every note, since we don't have valves or keys to rely on for articulations when we're slurring or playing legato or things like that. However, over the years, I have, I guess in my mostly self-taught wanderings on trombone, my exploration of the sounds that I can make on it, I've slowly gravitated towards some sounds that don't actually require tonguing. So the first thing that comes to mind as an articulation in which I don't tongue would be what's called a rip. I think this is a rip, or I think that's what this is called. So let me just play what I'm talking about here. So as you can hear with the rip, I'm starting a couple partials lower than the note I'm going for, and a couple slide positions out farther than the position of the note I'm going for, and I don't tongue that at all. I just turn on the air, turn on the embouchure, turn on the lips, and rip it all together, basically, which is kind of a weird word, a weird way to use the word rip. Usually we're ripping things apart, but in this case we're ripping them together. So no tongue on that one. So there's one articulation you can use that you don't tongue on. The other thing you can do is, I guess, sort of a reverse rip, where rather than starting on partials lower than the note you're going for, you start on a partial or two higher than the note you're going for. So let me show you what I mean with that. Okay, so on that one, I didn't use any tongue at all, and it was, I guess it's a pia, pia, pia kind of articulation, pia, 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 like that. So you start tighter than the note you're going for, which would make you a couple partials higher than the note you're going for, and then you go pia, down to the note you're going for. It works especially well in higher registers, so let's see how that sounds. Yeah, and as you can hear, it gets a little hard to control, maybe, and it starts to sound more like just very quick lip trills as you're going through the notes quickly. But it's a pretty effective technique. The rip and maybe that reverse rip you can do fairly loudly. I tend to play things pretty quietly, hence the name Quiet Horn. But I think rips for sure you can really rip into a note very loudly. I'm not sure about that reverse rip thing, but there you go. So there's a couple things where you can articulate without your tongue. I guess the third thing is something I do pretty frequently, which is I sort of breathe into a note and glissando up to it a little bit. Let me show you what I mean by that. Right, as you can hear, there's a lot of breath in there, and the articulation, again, no tongue. The articulation is really a sort of articulation. This is something I started doing when a long time ago when I was doing my improvised ambient trombone stuff, and I needed a way to articulate notes, basically fading them in. I found that single tonguing or any other tonguing really starts notes with too much attack, and I wanted really no attack. I wanted a very gradual attack or a fade in, right? So that's how that came about. It also sounds great with a plunger, so we'll just grab a plunger here. There's also something you can do at the end of these notes. I guess this would be a fourth non-tonguing articulation. If you start with a little vibrato as you're fading out the note, you can end the note with a pa 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 articulation. I'll show you what that is. Yeah, so that's a pa 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 on the end of the notes, and it's a nice way to soften things up. These two techniques really would work well in a smaller, more intimate setting, a duet, trio, quartet, or something like that. If you have a solo, I don't think they would work well if you are trying to play a ballad solo in front of a whole big band or something, because you'll lose some of the subtlety of those breathy sounds. Unless, I guess, if you have a microphone and if you're playing straight into the microphone, and if it's EQ'd well so that it's not too boomy. But yeah, so I think those are the main things, the main techniques that I have just evolved over the years as I've messed around with things. And I think what I want to do now is put them all together and play an old jazz ballad called "You Don't Know What Love Is." And this is it's a song I've just played over the years, but I noticed that when I play these older jazz ballads, I tend to use a lot of these techniques that I'm talking about. So I'm gonna start that off now. Probably start off with the plunger and then throw the plunger on the floor at some point.